So you may have seen this GOP clown getting himself arrested in recent days on account of, for one thing, essentially confessing to a crime, since he took it upon himself to go on MSNBC more than once to brag about how he and his cronies were essentially conducting their insurrection back in early 2021. And yeah, he is indeed quite a clown, as are many of these GOP lackeys these days. However, when we think of clowns, we think of, circus, fun, ha, ha, ha. This isn't funny. These people are dangerous clowns, criminal clowns. They're clowns that need to be removed from the political scene lest they ever accomplish their goals and essentially take down our democracy. Now, as far as his astrology, he's yet another case of a person whose birthday is well known, because if you are reasonably notorious, your birthday is something that can be found online. But his birth time is another matter, and this is what we would need in order to create a chart with an ascendant, put the planets in the houses, and so forth. But even without that, astrology tends to be quite remarkable at showing you by degree. You look at the planets and you see degree positions that are currently being challenged, being stimulated, being besieged. And you can see clearly in this guy's day positions that he's got a problem. And why does he have a problem? Because you look at his day chart and you immediately notice a T-square that is very similar to the one the Orange Menace has in his chart. In the case of Navarro, you've got Neptune opposite Eris square Mercury. And so then you know that Neptune in its transit becomes a potential major challenge when it would in some way aspect something else in its 165-year orbit. And what is it doing in current days, concurrent with his arrest? It's moving toward a station in Pisces degrees later this month, as a matter of fact, where it will be squaring his Mars. And then you also know Neptune does this now, but then it backtracks, comes back. He's looking at Neptune pressure to that Mars all through the rest of this year and next year. That's a problem. Know that about it. Then you continue looking and you see that he has a Jupiter-Sun opposition. Jupiter, 27 plus Capricorn, Sun, 22 and a bit, Cancer. And you notice that those Capricorn degrees feature the transit of Pluto during this period. That one is more intense this year than next, but there's enough next year from Pluto to still connect it to that Jupiter, because Pluto moves really slowly. It will go deeper into Capricorn and touch Aquarius, but it backtracks enough that it'll still hit that Jupiter hard in 2023. So that's two planets now that have them in a vice of sorts. Then you see that the Venus in Leo at 17 degrees is due to get the full force of the Saturn station later this year from Aquarius. That's another one you don't want. The last thing you need is to be in any kind of legal trouble, much less arrested, with Saturn challenging you like that. And although that Saturn challenge happens fiercely, intensely in the fall, or rather from the fall all the way into early winter, but then by next year, Saturn does leave those degrees. His problem is that Uranus is squaring that Venus at the same time, Uranus in its 84-year orbit. Uranus is doing that this year, but it's doing that all through next year as well. So now you have 4 planets intensely hammering this chart. And then this chart illustrates a principle that I've reminded people about in regard to Jupiter people sometimes think Jupiter is always a good influence, and that isn't true. First of all, his Jupiter opposes the sun. That automatically describes a person who is likely to overdo things, over-exaggerate, get into hyperbole, and then potentially get in trouble as a result. Reminds me of the Orange Menace, who has a similar connection to Jupiter. But Jupiter in its cycle is currently going through Aries, and notice that this guy was arrested, got in trouble after Jupiter entered Aries. And Jupiter in Aries, aside from forming the square to his son Jupiter during this period, which therefore makes it challenging, is moving toward a 9-degree Aries station in late July. When it does that, it's going to catch his Eris position and essentially turn on that T-square. That is not helpful. That may even be the worst of all these factors that I've mentioned so far. And if I want to add even more to this, the Eris itself is part of that T-square. So that planet in its transit could be dangerous. Eris moves glacially slow, and his whole life goes from 7 degrees. It's only now in the 24th degree, because this is the problem. A planet that is that slow, that ever finds a spot that is dangerous, you're not just in a little bit of trouble, you're in a lot of trouble, and you're in long-term trouble, because it's going to hang out there for years and years. And that's exactly what it's doing. Eris at the moment is in a sense between the degrees of the Jupiter-Sun opposition. It's at 24, and it's going to move really, really, really slowly toward 27. So God help him if that Eris has some kind of connection to legal matters, to getting in trouble with the law, the way the Orange Menace has, in a similar way, because in the case of the Orange Menace, Eris is definitely connected to legal affairs. But wait, there's still more. The moon is shown at 26 degrees Pisces. We don't know the time, meaning that the earlier he is born, the closer it'll be to the 22-degree Pisces range, which would be midnight on that day, if he's born right at the very beginning. But if he's born later and later, then he gets later and later Pisces degrees, which means Neptune is in there conjoining, which you don't want, for the same reason you don't want Neptune squaring Mars, which I said earlier is a problem, right? And in fact, the later this guy is born, the more problematic it can be, because it means the Neptune this year, next year, and the year after that would be in play, clearly not in a good way. This would be a signal, by the way, that legal trouble or not, stormy waters ahead in a chart like this, because you see that so many points are involved. And I'm not even considering a birth time because I don't have it. And I'll end by saying that this guy also illustrates something that I said about the Mar-a-Lago cockroach way back when, in regard to his Mercury-Neptune square. In astrology, planets are expressed in a range. There's a high end and a low end. Planet can be a fabulous influence for positivity, for expansion, for growth, for prosperity, for all kinds of things. It can also be a huge problem on the other end. And just so, if Neptune is on the high end, the most spiritual planet, incredibly imaginative, incredibly creative, on the low end, you get gaslighters, deceivers, world-class liars. You already know where I'm going with this. Trump, Navarro, you know where they are, right? I also said that since you're looking at Mercury, planet of mind, it's a judgment that I made months and months ago. The Orange Menace is dumb as a rock. It's the signature of a stupid person, or rather, the potential signature of a stupid person. And here we have stupid number 2. And for one thing, how wise is it to go on national TV and outline a crime? How wise is that? How smart is that? The answer is, it's not.